The night of our game against Texas, my dad passed due to complications from his cancer treatment. A week later, we held his funeral, and immediately after, I decided to enlist in the Army. My dad wanted me to make it to the NFL, and I was still going to do that, but if I didn't enlist right now, then when would I? So I went to basic, and the only overseas deployment I ever saw in my 4 years was in Japan, where I met my current girlfriend. I decided to leave the military after my 4 years and finally enter the NFL draft to honor my father, RB Meadows. It was a little unusual to see a 26-year-old rookie enter the NFL draft, but Stetson Bennett paved the way. Actually, though, is anyone ever going to mention how a 30-year-old quarterback named Brandon Weeden got drafted in the first round by the Cleveland Browns? I thought based on those predecessors, I had a chance of getting drafted in the first, still just based off of my senior year. I had put on a little bit more muscle, but I hadn't lost any quickness at 26 years of age. I saw the first few picks come off the board, and then I saw the first round end without my name being called. Ben Jones was the first running back to go off the board, and he went to the Ravens. I ended up being the third running back off the board, and I got picked 15th in the second to go to the Colts. There was a mixture of sadness, confusion, and excitement about that pick for me. Sadness because I wasn't able to experience this with my father, confusion because I didn't understand how I would fit with Jonathan Taylor on the team still, and then excitement obviously because I had achieved one of my dreams and it was time to get to work. I decided to wear number 88 because I was told with Jonathan Taylor still on the roster, I'd be sort of a joker type of player, moving between tight end, fullback, and running back. I was doing really well in training camp before the season began, and I was excited to prove myself to Shane Steichen and the rest of the coaching staff, but in our first game against the Bears, I showcased all of my skills and made a few splash plays. I had some solid runs, and I had one big chunk play lining up on the outside at wide receiver where Anthony Richardson hit me for a 55-yard pass. Despite my performance, I rarely touched the field my rookie season. I was effective though when I did get opportunities. I had 7 touchdowns on only 77 carries. In my second season, we made the playoffs after Shane Steichen was fired, and we hired Sean McVay, and I still had the same limited role as my rookie season. I saw limited action mostly as a special teamer. I had one big carry in the third quarter on a stretch to the left side, and I only had one man to beat, but Devin Lloyd brought me down for a 2-yard loss, and we ended up losing our wildcard playoff game to the Jaguars. In my third season, surprise, I was still the running back 2 behind Jonathan Taylor. I think the Colts were seriously considering trading him when they drafted me, and I was the contingency option, but since they worked out their differences, I got shafted and sat on the bench instead of being utilized. This season, we made it to the divisional round against the Browns, and I had been upgraded to the kick returner. I didn't really have any explosive returns in our matchup, and the Browns scored a touchdown to give them the lead with only 14 seconds left, knocking us out of the playoffs again. At this point, I was just actually hoping that I'd be traded already or that the Colts wouldn't pick up my contract, but since I had 12 rushing touchdowns and only 120 carries my third year, it was unlikely I'd be just straight up cut. I was ecstatic when my agent called and let me know that during the offseason that I would be traded to the Chargers. My only concern was how the team was going to split my carries with Austin Eckler, but it turns out they traded him, so I was going to finally be the running back 1. Our season opener was against the Chiefs, who just came off of another Super Bowl win, and I felt like it was our turn to take over the AFC West. Finally, I got to implement what I've been doing as their running back 2 with more volume, and I knew I could have an all-pro type of season. The Chargers let me be me, and they were happy that I was a great blocker and receiver that could play all 3 downs on top of the fact that I was a bruising power back. At this point in my career, I would compare myself to just a more athletic and handsome Ramondre Stevenson. In my debut game against the Chiefs, I made a lot of Chargers fans happy about trading for me. I broke off another huge run to average nearly 7 yards per carry with 70 rushing yards before the end of the first half. But Justin Herbert was having some struggles. He threw an interception to a linebacker that was lurking on a slant route, and we were already down 7-13 in the third quarter. I was also a great decoy as the defense focused in on me and left the RPO wide open for Quentin Johnston, and I had my best run of my career up to this point against the Chiefs to give us a 21-19 lead as I took it in for a 30-yard rushing touchdown. The Chiefs scored twice unanswered and regained a 2-touchdown lead over us despite how well I was running the ball. I continued to showcase my skill set, and I was likely making some Colts fans pissed about their front office's decision to trade me. I got split out at wide receiver again and completely cooked the corner, taking it into the end zone for my second touchdown of the game. With 20 seconds though, it wouldn't be enough and we'd start our season with an L. I think that loss stuck with us because midway through the season we had a 1-6 record before our game against the Broncos, and rumors were swirling about Brandon Staley's job being on the line after another disappointing season, so he was in a bad mood every practice and every game. I didn't really blame him that much though because we had the talent on this roster to be competing for a Super Bowl, but a 1-6 record shouldn't even be possible with this squad. I was having a great year individually though, so I didn't really know how to feel. We were down 16-3 in the fourth, again despite how well I was actually running the ball. Finally, we started to get some momentum on offense, and we got down into the red zone where I ended up being in the flat, and I caught a ball and flipped over defenders as I dove into the end zone, adding another highlight to the mixtape and putting even more Meadows jerseys on fans. We got the ball back with 20 seconds left and no timeouts, but we didn't do enough to get a touchdown, and we walked out with our 7th loss of the season, most likely cementing Staley being fired, and we were looking at getting a top 5 pick in the draft instead of a top 5 seeding in the playoffs like we had expected. I had gotten so much better as a player after just 1 year as a starter. I wish that I had gotten that opportunity straight out of the draft, but everything happens for a reason, I guess. I ended up winning the 2027 Running Back of the Year for the AFC, which finally gave me some validation as a top running back in the league in every aspect. I think what I bring in terms of versatility is what sets me apart, and I also got extended for 3 more years to play with the Chargers, making about $7 million per year. We had the 4th pick in the draft after having a terrible season, and we ended up drafting a dog at corner, Lorenzo Burks, 6'3", super fast, and in the mold of Tariq Woolen. After winning the award for Best Running Back, I proposed to my longtime girlfriend, Asa Akira, and we got married before the season opener against the Browns, where I showed my continued development as a playmaker despite the fact that I was already 30 at running back. The biggest boost we got in the offseason besides the draft was that we signed Kyle Shanahan to be our new head coach to replace Brandon Staley, and it turned out to be just the right move as we turned the team around from 4-13 to 11-6. Capped off by our final game against the Falcons, where I decimated their defense early and often with multiple 60-plus yard runs and 2 touchdowns as well. I had another career year with 13 rushing touchdowns and nearly 1,600 rushing yards, along with almost 500 receiving yards. Caleb Godwin, our number 1 wide receiver, who was in the same draft class as me, also had a great 16-touchdown season. Our wildcard game came against the Ravens, and Kyle Shanahan would put me in every position imaginable. Pause. I landed up at wide receiver in the slot and as a traditional halfback. I do have to give a shout out to the O-line in this game especially, though. There were gaping holes up the middle, leaving me 10 yards of space before seeing a single defender, and I was just bouncing off of guys, juking guys out, and literally nobody on the Ravens defense could stop me. I might actually be the best blocking running back in the league, but it didn't matter as Justin Herbert threw up a one-on-one ball that got intercepted in the back of the end zone while we were only up 3-0. I continued to put the team on my back, though, ripping off a 20-yard run with 3 defenders on my back, and then we ended up getting into the red zone again, and on 3rd down, I lined up at wide receiver. I ran a short out, and I caught the ball at the 1-yard line, and I was ruled out of bounds, so on 4th and goal, we went for it, and I dunked it over a defender to get into the end zone for our first touchdown of the game. Baltimore scored, and we were down 1 with 2 minutes left, and Coach drew up a perfect pick play to get Palmer wide open. If I'm being honest, I definitely should have gotten offensive pass interference on this play, but we're just not going to talk about that. Instead of being conservative, though, once we got into the red zone and taking the game-winning field goal, I popped into the end zone for another touchdown. We moved on to the divisional, where we would play against our division rival, the Chiefs. This would be our best opportunity to finally dethrone the Chiefs in the playoffs that we've ever had. We were playing in Arrowhead Stadium in a snow game, though, so it was a little bit weird, but after my performance versus the Ravens, Coach told me that I'd be getting the ball every play on our first possession. It felt like everyone around me was moving in slow motion. I'm not sure if it was the snow or that I was just reading the defense that well, but everything felt like it was coming really easily to me, and the blocks were just lining up perfectly. Once we got into the red zone, the Chiefs knew who was getting the ball, but they just couldn't stop me. On 1st and goal, I nearly got into the end zone, but fell down right at the goal line, and on the very next play, I dove into the end zone for our first touchdown of the game. We felt unstoppable after that initial touchdown, but fast forward to 3 minutes left in the 4th, and we had scored 0 points after that touchdown, and we were down 10 with the ball. The ball had gotten knocked loose on 3rd down, and then on 4th down, I ended up calling for the ball again, and Herbert got baited by me into an interception that got returned for a touchdown, and that would be the end of our season in the divisional. I hadn't mentioned this up to this point, but it was great having my mom and my wife at every home game and every playoff game. Even if my dad couldn't be there, I still had them supporting me no matter what the outcome was. Again, I felt like I was at my peak as a 32-year-old running back, but I was a little bit hurt when the Chargers drafted Jerry Allen, a running back out of Michigan State, with their 1st-round pick. I had another season with about 1,800 all-purpose yards and 12 total touchdowns, but we missed the playoffs again. We drafted a linebacker in the 1st round, and then the following year, I put up career-high numbers in a few different categories, averaging over 5 yards per carry with nearly 1,600 rushing yards again and 10 rushing touchdowns. But we had started the year with a 1-6 record that we couldn't recover from to make the playoffs, and so we underperformed for a 2nd year in a row despite arguably having my best year ever. I ended up being cut from the roster at age 34, and somehow I couldn't sign with any other team in the league, forcing me to retire. My wife and I ended up having 2 kids, Jordan Asa Meadows and Bradley Meadows Jr., in honor of my father. I'm not sure what's next for me in my career. I could go back to being a military officer, or I could take up coaching, but I haven't made up my mind. For now, I think I'm just going to enjoy my time with my kids. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this series in the comments. I appreciate everybody for watching. Look out for a new series coming up with a defensive end from Romania named Arlo Karamova, who's playing in Florida. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.